Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I wasn't planning on stopping anywhere that night. If things had gone the way they were supposed to, I would have been home in Carson City before midnight, drinking leftover chamomile tea and passing out on my couch. But I'd taken an extra overtime shift at a distribution center outside a tiny California town called Alder Creek, a job I only picked up because my savings were draining faster than I could refill them. Life had gotten messy since last spring. My mom's medical bills, the breakup with Jenna, losing my full-time factory position after 6 years. I'd been scrambling between temp jobs just to keep myself afloat. My body felt like it never fully rested anymore. Every day felt like I was paying a debt I never remembered borrowing. That night it caught up to me. Driving through rural Northern California, the highway stretching endlessly through the dark, my eyes turned heavy, burning every time I blinked. My hands locked stiff around the steering wheel like they didn't trust me to stay awake. The headlights of oncoming cars smeared into long white shapes that didn't feel real. About an hour south of the Nevada border, I forced myself to admit it. I wasn't going to make it home alive if I kept driving. I needed a room. Any room. So I pulled over on the shoulder, opened my cracked phone screen, and searched for motels nearby. Only one popped up within 20 miles. Clearwood Motor Lodge. No website. No photos. No recent reviews. Just an address off Route 49 and a number that looked like it hadn't changed since 1993. I hesitated. Then I sighed, rubbed my eyes, and tapped call. A man answered on the second ring. "Clearwood," he said. His voice was rough, old, not unfriendly, but dry, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in hours. Hi. I've been driving all day. Do you have any vacancy tonight?" Pause, then, "Room 12 is open. Cash or card, just come in through the front." Something in his voice felt hollow, like he wasn't surprised, like he'd been waiting, but I was too exhausted to care. "I'm 20 minutes out," I said. He just hummed an acknowledgement and hung up. It was nearly 1:15 a.m. by the time I turned off the highway onto a narrow two-lane road. The air got noticeably colder, like I'd driven through a temperature line. Pine trees closed in from both sides, tall and silent, swallowing the sky until I could barely see the moon. When I saw the motel lights appear through the trees, my first reaction was relief. But then I got a better look. Clearwood Motor Lodge wasn't really a lodge at all. It was a long, single-story rectangle of beige siding, maybe 12 or 14 rooms total, each door lit by a single weak bulb. A wooden office booth sat near the entrance, its porch light flickering like it was dying in slow motion. There wasn't a single other car in the lot, no humming air conditioners, no TV glow from the windows. The place looked forgotten. My phone buzzed weakly in my pocket. No signal. "Great," I muttered. I parked outside room 12 and stepped out. The gravel crunched under my boots, echoing louder than it should have. As I was grabbing my backpack from the passenger seat, the office door creaked open. The man from earlier stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with a worn-out denim jacket and long, thinning gray hair. His skin was leathery, lined like old tree bark. But what struck me most were his eyes, not cold, not threatening, just tired, deeply, profoundly tired. "You the caller?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Name's Aaron." He didn't shake my hand, didn't smile. He just nodded and motioned toward the office. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and something metallic, like old tools. He grabbed an ancient card reader from behind the desk, the kind that used phone jacks and prayer. "Card?" he asked. I handed it to him. He barely glanced at it before swiping. The machine beeped with a sickly electronic chirp. He handed me a brass key, heavy, cold, attached to a faded leather tag that read 12 in shaky handwriting. "If you need extra blankets, they're in the closet," he said. "Thanks." He paused, then added, "Stay inside tonight, yeah? Woods get confusing after dark." His tone wasn't warning me. It was instructing me. Before I could reply, he turned and disappeared into the back office. I walked to room 12 feeling unsettled, But sleep-deprived desperation trumped anything my instincts tried to whisper. The outside light above my door wasn't just dim, it was dead. I had to use my phone flashlight to get the key into the knob. The room itself was serviceable. Faded green walls, a queen bed with a stiff floral quilt, a small TV from the early 2000s that probably weighed more than my car, carpet that smelled faintly of cleaner and something old. Not dirty, just uncomfortably still. Whatever, I didn't come for luxury. I tossed my backpack on the chair, set my alarm for 6:30 a.m., and collapsed onto the bed without even removing my boots. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember what woke me. A knock. Soft. Two gentle taps. My eyes snapped open. My heart kicked against my ribs like it had been startled awake too. I sat up, listened. Nothing. Then, two more taps. A little louder this time. I looked at the digital clock. 2:08 a.m. My first thought, maybe the old man needed something. My second thought, why knock like that? I stayed still, holding my breath. Silence settled in again. Thick, heavy. I got up and walked toward the window. Slowly. The air felt colder near the glass. I peeled the curtain open a sliver and glanced outside. At first I didn't see anything. Then something moved. Low to the ground. Right at the edge of the light coming from the office porch. I blinked. Hard. Whatever it was, it crawled. Not like an animal. Not like a person. Something in between. Then it slipped back into the darkness. My entire body went cold. "Nope," I whispered. I backed away from the window, grabbed the metal lamp from the nightstand, and sat on the bed with it, gripped in both hands. Sleep was no longer an option. The hours stretched painfully slow. I kept listening. Every creak of the building made my chest tighten. The silence outside felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. Just around 5:30 a.m., when the first faint hint of blue touched the horizon, I heard another sound. A door opening. Slow. Creaking like old joints. I froze. Footsteps followed. Soft. Barefoot. Dragging slightly. I set the lamp down, heart pounding, and cracked my door open just enough to look outside. That's when I saw her. A woman. Mid-40s maybe. Long dark hair hanging over her shoulders. Barefoot. Wearing a thin white nightgown that swayed with her steps. She came from room 4. She walked slowly across the gravel lot, heading straight toward the tree line. Her eyes were open, staring forward, unblinking. Her face blank, like she wasn't really there. "Ma'am?" I whispered. She didn't hear, didn't turn, didn't hesitate. She just stepped into the trees and disappeared between them, like the forest swallowed her whole. My breath hitched. I shut my door, grabbed my keys, and bolted outside. I sprinted across the lot to the office and banged on the door. "Hey, open up! Someone just walked into the woods!" Silence. I hit the door again, harder. "Sir, the woman from room 4, she looks sick or something's wrong." Still nothing. I tried my phone again. Still no service. I turned, scanning the lot. That's when I saw him, the motel owner, standing at the edge of the woods, barefoot, motionless, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Sir," I yelled, "that woman, she went into the forest. Is she staying here?" He didn't answer. He just smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was small, thin, like someone pretending they remembered how. Then he turned and slowly walked back toward the office. Something in my gut told me if I stayed another second, I wouldn't make it out. I shoved my backpack into the passenger seat, jammed the keys into the ignition, and floored it out of the lot. I didn't look back, not once. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station in Silver Pines, 30 miles away. Only then did my phone regain signal. My hands shook as I typed Clearwood Motor Lodge incidents into Google. Nothing. No recent reviews, no listings, no record of ownership. But then I switched to image search, and I froze. A newspaper clipping from 2001. 5 missing persons linked to Clearwood Motor Lodge. Wood search called off. Below it, a grainy photo of the same building, unchanged, and beneath that, names of guests who had vanished. One of them, Marjorie Hale, 42, last seen leaving room 4. Same age, same look. Same blank expression. The article said her body was never found. Another headline from 2010. Property shut down after unsolved incidents. Owner found dead near tree line. The motel had been closed for years, but I just stayed there, which meant whoever reopened it wasn't supposed to, or wasn't human, or wasn't alone. I scrolled further but found nothing past 2011. No reopening notices, no new licenses, nothing. Clearwood Motor Lodge didn't exist anymore. Not officially, not legally, not in the eyes of anyone living. That night comes back to me sometimes, especially the woman's vacant stare and how silently the owner watched from the trees. Sometimes I wonder if they were calling for me the way they'd called for the others. If exhaustion was the only reason I survived, or if something else was waiting to see if I'd step outside again. I wish I could forget. But every night, between 2 and 3 a.m., I still hear those two soft knocks in my head. And I know, if I ever go back near Alder Creek, if I ever get too tired behind the wheel again, Clearwood will be waiting. Story 2. I never imagined my life would shrink down to a shoebox apartment and a night clerk job at a rundown roadside motel. But that's exactly where I ended up after everything went wrong in Denver. For years, I'd worked maintenance for a small contracting company. Steady work, decent pay, predictable hours. But after my mom passed unexpectedly and I spiraled into a mess of late shifts, missed deadlines, and too many days calling in sick, I got laid off. Losing that job hit me harder than I expected. I didn't just lose the income. I lost the routine that kept my head above water. Rent notices piled up, and eventually my landlord taped a final warning to my door. That was when my cousin, Eric, from the kind of side of the family we only saw at funerals, said he knew a cheap place near Pine Hollow, Montana. It wasn't glamorous, he warned, but it was affordable. Affordable meant survival. So I packed whatever fit in my car and drove 12 hours north to a town I'd never heard of, in a state I'd barely visited. Pine Hollow wasn't even a real town. It was more like a cluster of gas stations and aging houses crammed between two stretches of forest. But my cousin found me a studio above an old tax prep office. $350 a month, no lease, and a window that didn't open. The floor sagged near the sink, and the heater rattled like it was coughing up dust. But it was a roof over my head. A week after settling in, I walked into the Red Maple Lodge, a single-story motel off Highway 72, the kind truckers stopped at when they had no other option. The neon sign buzzed unevenly, one side flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. A printed paper taped to the front door read, "Now hiring, night desk." The owner, Frank Calder, hired me before I even sat down. He looked like a man permanently running on black coffee. Thin, jittery, dark bags under his eyes. "You stay awake. You keep the peace. You don't lose the keys," he told me. "And if anyone tries to start something stupid, you call me. Don't be a hero. Just don't break anything." That's how my new life started. It wasn't glamorous, but it was simple. And at the time, simple was exactly what I needed. It was late October, cold enough that the wind rattled the siding and made the doors whistle. Most travelers checked in early that night, exhausted drivers wanting nothing except a hot shower and a bed that didn't smell awful. Around 10:30 p.m., a woman came in. She looked worn out, the kind of tired that sinks into the bones. Dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, oversized gray sweatshirt, eyes that scanned the parking lot every few seconds like she was expecting someone. "You got any rooms?" she asked. Her voice carried the uneven tremble of someone running on fear or adrenaline. "Yeah," I said. "Just one night?" "Just tonight, please." She paid cash, hands shaking, wouldn't make eye contact for more than half a second. "Name for the log?" She hesitated, eyes flicking outside again. "Morgan. Just put Morgan." I gave her the key to room 14, near the end of the building. Before she walked out, she leaned in slightly and whispered, "Do you have cameras here?" "Couple in the parking lot," I said. "Good." She turned fast, clutching the key like it was life support. I told myself people traveling late sometimes acted paranoid, but something about her Her eyes, the tightness in her voice stuck with me. It was close to 1:15 a.m. when the front door chimed again. No headlights, no engine, no footsteps on gravel. I looked up, and there he was, a man in his mid-30s, maybe 40s, wearing a denim jacket over a plaid shirt. Average height, average build, but something about him felt off, like he was standing too still, too stiff. "Need a room?" I asked. He didn't answer. His eyes kept darting behind me, like something on the wall was whispering secrets. "You need a room or—" Finally, he muttered, "No. No, I was just looking." "For what?" He blinked slowly, like the question confused him. Then he turned and walked out. I waited for the sound of a car door or gravel crunching. Nothing. After a few seconds, I stepped outside. The parking lot sat under a pale moon, empty except for 3 cars belonging to guests. Beyond that, forest. Thick, black, swallowing the edges of the property. The man was gone. "Probably a drifter," I whispered to myself. "Probably just wandering." But the unease stayed. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the desk phone rang. I nearly dropped my pen. "Front desk, Red Maple Lodge." A voice, soft, shaking, whispered, "He's outside my window." It was Morgan. My stomach nodded. "Outside your window?" "Yes," she whispered. He won't leave. Please, please come. I'll be right there." I grabbed the flashlight and stepped into the cold air. The motel lights cast long shadows across the walkway as I hurried down. When I reached room 14, the curtain shifted, her face peeking through a tiny gap. "He's right there," she whispered. I looked around. Nobody, but something felt wrong, like eyes pressing against the back of my skull. "Ma'am, it's clear. Are you sure?" Before I finished, the door creaked open. She stepped out just enough that the hallway light hit her face. "He was here," she insisted. "He was standing right by the window, staring in." "What did he look like?" She swallowed. Plaid shirt, dark hair, empty eyes. My chest tightened. The same guy. "Do you want me to call the sheriff's office?" I asked. "No," she said instantly. "Please don't. I don't want this to become a huge thing. Ma'am, this is serious." "No police," she repeated softly. "Just, please keep an eye out." Something about her tone carried more fear than her words. But she slipped back into her room and shut the door before I said anything else. When I returned to the office, something on the key rack caught my eye. Key 9 missing, but I hadn't checked in a room 9 that night. I grabbed the log sheet. Room 9 was supposed to be empty. Cold dread slipped through me. Someone had taken that key. Someone who hadn't checked in. Someone who didn't want to be seen. The scream cut through the quiet like a blade. High-pitched, terrified. Room 14. I bolted out the door so fast the desk chair slammed into the wall behind me. Gravel scattered beneath my shoes as I sprinted down the row of rooms. Room 14's door was partly open. Light spilled out onto the sidewalk. I burst inside. Morgan was cornered against the far wall, both hands raised. Her breath came in small broken gasps, and between us, him, the man from earlier, his face twisted in rage, eyes bloodshot, lips pulled back like an animal ready to strike. "Hey!" I shouted. He snapped toward me like he hadn't realized anyone else existed until that second. I froze. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then he charged, but not at me, past me. He vaulted out the door, sprinting across the parking lot toward the tree line. I chased him halfway across the lot before the darkness swallowed him whole and the forest closed behind him like a mouth. Within seconds, he was gone. I stood there breathing hard, frozen between fear and disbelief. When I finally returned to the room, Morgan slid down the wall, trembling violently. "I'm calling the sheriff," I said. This time she didn't argue. The truth comes out. Deputies arrived fast, lights cutting across the empty highway. One stayed with me while the other spoke to Morgan inside her room. After nearly 20 minutes, the deputy stepped out and walked toward me. "She told us everything," he said quietly. "Everything?" I asked. He nodded. "That man is her ex-husband. Name's Bradley Kane. Violent history, protective order in place. He violated it more than once before. She left Colorado yesterday morning to get away from him. Thought he wouldn't follow this far. My jaw clenched. How did he know she was here? Some people get obsessed, the deputy said. Looks like he stole a spare key and waited. I remembered the empty hook for room 9. We'll search the wood, he promised. They searched until dawn. They didn't find him. I kept working the night shift because I didn't have another option. But something changed in me. Every gust of wind outside made me tense. Every creak in the hallway made me check over my shoulder. Every guest with a blank expression made my heart pound. Every empty hook on the key rack froze my blood. Morgan left with the deputies that night, never came back, never called. I don't blame her, but the man, Bradley, was never caught. Some nights I swear I can still see that first image of him, standing motionless in the entryway, eyes scanning the room like he knew how the night would end. After 3 months of tense, sleepless nights, I finally got hired at a repair shop in Billings. As soon as I had my first paycheck, I packed up my tiny studio and left Pine Hollow behind. Frank still texts me once in a while, usually short messages like, "Quiet week. New clerk seems okay. Still no cameras working." But last month he wrote me something different. Had a guy lurking near room 9 again. Looked familiar. Sheriff checked, but he was gone. I stared at the message for a long time. Some people get obsessed. And some obsessions don't die just because the night ends. I try not to think about it now, but every time I pull into a motel parking lot, even for a quick bathroom break, I catch myself checking the shadows. Every time a stranger stares too long, my heart kicks harder. And sometimes when I'm alone, I swear I can still hear the faint crunch of gravel, like someone following just a few steps behind. Story 3. I didn't plan on landing in a place like Redwater, Oregon. If my life hadn't fallen apart all at once, I probably wouldn't even know the town existed. I was 26 when everything went sideways. My dad passed suddenly from a stroke, my full-time warehouse job cut staff a week later, and the relationship I'd been in for 3 years cracked under the weight of too many arguments and too much silence. 1 month was all it took to lose the 3 pillars I thought made my life stable. When my apartment lease ended, I couldn't afford to renew it. My mom kept urging me to move back home, but the house felt different after Dad died, quiet in a way that hurt. I felt like staying there would make the grief heavier, so I promised her I'd manage on my own. She didn't believe it, and honestly, neither did I. I packed what little I had left into my old Honda and drove north. I didn't have a plan, just a vague hope that a cheaper town would buy me time to figure out my life. That's how I found Redwater, a small logging town with 1 grocery store, a diner, and a motel sitting on the far edge of Highway 41 called the Willow Bend Motor Lodge. The neon sign flickered at night, the kind of flicker that feels like a warning, but rent in Redwater was half of what I'd paid in the city. I took a room at a month-to-month studio and started applying anywhere that didn't require a degree. The job I ended up taking wasn't glamorous. It wasn't smart either, but I was desperate. A handwritten flyer taped to a gas station fridge read, "Night clerk needed. Willow Bend Motor Lodge reliable. Must handle overnight shift. Ask for Harold. No email. No phone number. Just that." I drove over the same day. Harold met me outside the office. He looked late 60s, tall, sunburned skin, with that stiff posture older men get when they've worked physical jobs too long. He kept pushing his glasses up his nose even though they weren't slipping. "You're?" He squinted at me. "Adrian?" "Yeah, Adrian Vale. You got any experience working nights?" "A few years ago, I worked shipping. Graveyard shifts sometimes." He nodded slowly, as if that was all he needed. "Good. Nobody else wants to work out here this late. Too quiet. Most folks can't stand quiet." There was something odd in the way he said it, like the quiet wasn't a peaceful kind but something else. But I didn't question it. Inside the office, the lodge felt old but functional. A wall of brass keys behind the desk, a dusty mini fridge humming in the corner, a black and white TV hooked to what looked like an ancient CCTV system. Only 3 feeds worked: parking lot, front walkway, and the office door. "Rooms 11 through 19 don't have cameras," Harold said. "Cables got torn up in a storm last year. Haven't replaced them." He went over the duties to check in late travelers, answer calls, keep the place running until he came back at 6 a.m. He handed me a binder with rules so thick it looked like a textbook. Then he paused, tapping his finger over one page. "Last rule is important," he said, voice low. "If anyone asks about room 14, tell them it's under renovation. Don't check anyone in there. Don't go near it, understood?" The room number sat bolted on the page, as if someone had written over it again and again. "Why?" I asked. "Because I said so," he replied, smile thin and unconvincing. "That's enough, son." I wanted to walk away right then, but my savings were thin, my options thinner. I told myself all old motels have weird rooms with busted plumbing or mold problems. Nothing supernatural about bad maintenance. I started the next night. I clocked in at 9 p.m. The sun had just dipped behind the ridge, and the temperature dropped fast once darkness settled. Redwater had the kind of quiet where you could hear your own blood rushing if you stood still long enough. The first few hours were uneventful. One trucker checked into room 7, thanked me, and disappeared. The parking lot stayed empty after that. Around 1:40 a.m., the phone rang. "Willow Bend Motor Lodge. This is Adrian." Nothing. Just faint breathing. "Hello?" A whisper, barely audible. "Do you see him?" My shoulders stiffened. "See who?" A click. The line went dead. I stared at the handset, confused, then scanned the camera feeds. Nothing. Just the empty walkway and an empty lot. I chalked it up to prank callers, the kind every motel must get at night. But something about the way they whispered made my stomach twist. The next night started the same. Quiet, too quiet. The trucker from room 7 returned his key early, saying he was heading out before sunrise, though he looked exhausted and jittery. "You okay?" I asked. He shook his head. "Didn't sleep a damn minute. Something kept tapping the window. Thought maybe it was a branch. But there ain't any trees near my room." He tried to laugh, but couldn't. "Probably wind," I said. "Yeah," he muttered. "Wind." He didn't sound convinced. Hours later, the phone rang again. "Do you see him now?" Same whisper. Same breathy pause. Same abrupt hang-up. I checked the cameras. Still nothing. But when I looked away from the monitor, something caught my eye. The brass key for room 14, the one Harold warned me about, was missing from the board. My stomach dropped. I hadn't checked anyone in. I hadn't touched it. I went to the walkway to look. Room 14's door was shut, locked, dark, still. When I leaned closer, I swore I heard something inside. A faint dragging sound, slow, deliberate. I stepped back fast. Something wasn't right. When I got to the office, Harold was already there, flipping through paperwork like he hadn't been bothered at all. "Everything good so far?" he asked. "Someone keeps calling at night," I said, "asking if I see him. And yesterday, the key for room 14 disappeared." Harold didn't react the way a normal boss would. No surprise, no concern, no anger, just a tired sigh. "You want this job or not?" he asked quietly. "That's not an answer." He leaned closer. "Then here's your answer. Don't ask questions about that room. Don't pick up calls you don't like. And keep your head down. You do that, you'll keep this job." Something in his eyes softened then. Fear, maybe, or guilt. "I'm not trying to scare you, Adrian. I just need someone who won't poke around." I swallowed my frustration and nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling he was hiding something big, something he wanted me far away from. That night started normally. I microwaved a frozen burrito, skimmed through the binder, and tried to distract myself. At 3:08 a.m., the office doorbell chimed. I turned toward the window and froze. A man stood outside, tall, lean, head lowered, clothes soaked as if he'd walked through a river. His hands hung limp at his sides. I approached slowly and cracked the door open. "Sir, do you need a room?" His head lifted. His eyes were wrong, sunken, glassy, unfocused. The kind of eyes people describe when they talk about bodies at funerals. 14, he whispered. My throat tightened. "That room isn't available." He raised his left hand. In it, he held the brass key for room 14. My heartbeat thundered. Where did you get that? I stammered. He didn't answer. He just took one step closer, and I slammed the door shut, locking it. When I looked at the camera, he wasn't there anymore. Not walking away, not approaching a room, just gone, like he'd evaporated. I wanted to quit. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I needed the paycheck. Just one more night, I told myself. One more shift and I'd collect my cash and walk. The shift dragged until 2 a.m. Then the phone rang. I didn't want to answer, but something told me I had to. Hello? This time the voice wasn't a whisper. It was a man's voice. Deep, breathy, broken. He's at your window. I whipped toward the office window. Nothing. Just the dark parking lot. You've got the wrong number, I snapped, trying to steady my breathing. No, the voice said. He's there. The phone clicked. The CCTV screen flickered. Then a figure appeared on the walkway camera, stepping out from behind the ice machine. The same man, soaked clothes, hollow eyes, holding the brass key. He reached room 14. The door creaked open, even though it had been locked from the outside. A black void waited inside. Then he turned back toward the camera, as if he knew exactly where I was watching, and smiled. My skin went cold. Suddenly, the office door handle rattled violently. I yelped and stumbled back. Adrian! A voice through the door. Not the man's voice. Harold's. Open up! I cracked the door. He shoved his way inside, drenched in sweat and shaking. What did you do? He hissed. What do you mean, what did I do? You weren't supposed to talk to him. My pulse hammered. Who? He took a trembling breath. Room 14 was closed for a reason. A man died there 13 years ago. He drowned in the shower. Water kept filling even after they shut it off. The whole room flooded. No plumbing issue, no leaks, just water. He wiped his forehead. After that, guests started seeing someone outside their windows. Someone soaked. Someone looking for a key that should have stayed lost. My stomach flipped. What does he want? Harold's voice cracked. He wants someone to let him in. Before I could respond, the lights cut out. All 3 cameras went black. Then, a knock on the office window. Slow. 3 taps. I turned my head. The soaked man was standing inches from the glass, staring at me. Harold grabbed my arm. Don't look at him! The window shuddered like something pushed from outside. Run! Harold whispered. Through the back door. Now! We sprinted into the storage hall, but halfway down the corridor, we stopped dead. Water trickled from beneath the door of room 14, then more, and more, until a sheet of water poured across the walkway, cold and rising. Harold grabbed my wrist. We can't let him reach us. The overhead lights flickered. Then from behind us, footsteps. Wet. Slow. Dragging. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Harold shoved a side door open. Go! We burst outside into the freezing night and sprinted across the gravel. When I finally dared to look back, room 14's door was wide open. Water spilled into the parking lot like a burst pipe, and the soaked man stood in the doorway, staring after us, unmoving, watching, waiting. I never returned to Willow Bend Motor Lodge. I quit the next morning by phone. Harold didn't argue. He sounded relieved. The motel shut down a month later. Local news said structural water damage forced its closure. But I knew better. I still dream about that night sometimes. About the whisper on the phone. About the water spreading across the walkway. About the hollow eyes through the glass. And every now and then, when my apartment is quiet, too quiet, I swear I hear tapping on my window. 3 slow taps. Like someone still holding a brass key, looking for someone willing to let him in. Story 4. I didn't end up in Whitford, Virginia, because I had dreams of starting over. I came because I ran out of choices. I was 27 when I left Boston after my father's stroke emptied whatever future I'd been building. I'd quit my job as a CNA to take care of him, and when he passed 2 years later, all I had left was his rusted Chevy Malibu and a wall of unpaid bills. My cousin Amy insisted I move south. Cost of living's nothing down here, Mia. You can breathe again. Breathe. I hadn't done that in a long time. I rented a room above a thrift store in Whitford and took the first job that would hire someone with no local references. Night clerk at the Driftwood Lodge, a roadside motel that looked older than the interstate beside it. Peeling paint, buzzing vacancy sign, gravel parking lot that flooded every time it rained. But the owner, Mrs. Dalton, paid on time, didn't ask too many questions, and let me eat whatever expired snacks were left in the vending machines. It wasn't glamorous, but compared to the months I spent sleeping on my father's hospital couch, it felt almost peaceful. Almost. The week everything changed started like any other. Quiet, with a sort of silence that grew heavy the longer you listened to it. By late October, the nights dropped below freezing, so most travelers stayed on the highway instead of pulling off. I kept a space heater under the counter and read dog-eared paperbacks to stay awake. It was a little after 10 p.m. on a Thursday when the door opened and a gust of cold air cut through the lobby. I looked up. A man stood in the doorway, tall, thin, wearing a dark brown coat and leather gloves. The lights above him flickered. He didn't move until the automatic door finally dragged shut behind him. "Evening," I said, forcing a polite smile. "Need a room?" His eyes drifted to me. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. They were pale, almost gray, and so flat they made my stomach tighten, for reasons I didn't understand. "Yes," he said. His voice was low, smooth, and calm, in a way that felt practiced. "One night, away from the road." "We've got open rooms in the back row," I said. 10, 11, 12. Any preference?" 12. He didn't hesitate. I typed in his information. "Name?" He paused only half a heartbeat. "Jonathan Hale." I waited for him to slide a card across the counter. He didn't. Instead, he slowly reached into his coat pocket and set down a small, older-style Visa card. The name matched. Jonathan R. Hale. No ID offered standard in the 90s maybe. Not now. But something about him made me not want to press. The card went through instantly. "Room key," I said, handing over the chipped plastic fob. "The heat in that one can be a little finicky, so if I won't need it," he murmured, turning toward the hallway. He didn't ask where the room was. He walked straight to it, as if he already knew. For the first 2 nights, I barely saw him. The only proof he existed was the faint glow under his door and the quiet click of the lock whenever I passed by. Mrs. Dalton's rule was simple. If the "Do Not Disturb" sign is out, you leave the guests alone. Room 12 kept that sign up. But on the 3rd night, around 2:30 a.m., the silence broke. I was sipping instant coffee when I heard footsteps, slow, even measured, coming down the carpeted hall. I sat up straighter. The steps stopped right outside the lobby door before the handle turned. He stepped in. Mr. Hale stared at the snack display like he wasn't sure what anything was. Then he looked at me. "Is there coffee?" he asked. "At this hour?" "Sure," I said, standing. "Fresh pot, actually." I lied. It was 3 hours old. I poured him a cup. He never took off his gloves even though the lobby was warm. "Quiet play," he murmured. "Most night," I said. "Truckers prefer the bigger motels by the exit." He didn't respond. He just stood there, breathing slow. I tried a nervous laugh. "Long drive?" He tilted his head slightly. "You should lock the lobby door after midnight." "That hasn't really been an issue here." "It will be." A chill crawled up my spine. "Why do you say that?" Instead of answering, he lifted the coffee cup to eye level, as if studying it, then placed it gently on the counter, untouched. Then he walked away. "Have a good night," I called weakly. He didn't look back. The next morning, I told Mrs. Dalton that something felt off about him. "People passing through are always odd," she said, lighting a cigarette outside the office. "It's the ones who want to stay forever you worry about. This one's leaving soon. You worry too much, Mia." Maybe she was right. But when I went to drop fresh towels outside the guest rooms, I stopped at room 12 and froze. The hallway felt colder there. Not a sea cold, deeper, like walking into a basement. The "Do Not Disturb" sign was gone. I glanced around, then gently knocked. "Housekeeping, just dropping towels." No answer. I bent down, slid a folded stack of towels inside, and started to walk away. When something caught my eye. A thin line of light flickered under the door, pulsing faintly. Then it went dark. That night, around 1 a.m., I heard a sound I'll never forget. A woman's voice, faint, muffled, coming from the vents behind the front desk. At first, I thought it was some late-night TV, but the words sharpened. Help! I jerked upright. Hello? The voice whimpered. Two short, desperate cries. I stood on the chair and pressed my ear to the vent. Is someone there? Silence. Then barely audible. He won't... Let me... I stumbled off the chair, heart slamming. I looked down the hallway toward room 12, the only room on that vent line. My breathing grew shaky. My mind raced through possibilities. Another guest? A prank? Someone hurt? I grabbed the emergency master key from under the counter. As I walked toward the hallway, my legs felt heavy, like the air was thickening. The closer I got to room 12, the colder it became. My breath clouded in the dim light. I reached the door and lifted my hand to knock. And the door suddenly clicked. Not unlocked, not open, just clicked. As if someone inside had moved closer. A faint shadow shifted under the gap. I stepped back. I heard something from your vent, I said, voice trembling. Is everything okay in there? Silence. Mr. Hale? A slow, deliberate step approached the door on the other side. Another. I clutched the master key. Sir, if someone is hurt, I have to... Something touched the other side of the door. Not a hand. Something smoother, like leather. Then in a near whisper, you should go back to your desk, Mia. My heart jolted. How do you know my... Now? His voice didn't rise, but it carried something cold inside it. Something that made my instincts scream run. I stumbled backward, never taking my eyes off the door, and hurried to the lobby. I locked the front door. I locked the office door. I sat trembling behind the counter until 6 a.m. when Mrs. Dalton arrived. By then, room 12's hallway felt normal again. Warm, silent, empty. The do not disturb sign was back. The next afternoon before my shift, I found Mrs. Dalton in the maintenance shed, arguing with someone on the phone. When she hung up, her face was pale. That guest of yours, she muttered. The card he used. It came back stolen. Owner reported it taken from a car break-in 3 days ago. My stomach flipped. Should we call the police? I did. They said they'd swing by tonight. What if he leaves before then? She lit another cigarette. Then we'll just count ourselves lucky. But fate didn't wait for the police. At 9:15 p.m., a pickup truck pulled into the lot. A man in his 30s, mud-stained boots, frantic eyes, ran into the lobby. You the clerk? He gasped. Yeah. What's wrong? I'm looking for my sister. She never made it home from work last Friday. He pulled out a photo of a young woman in scrubs. Her car was found abandoned by the old quarry near here. Someone said they saw a guy in a brown coat picking her up. My blood ran cold. A brown coat? I whispered. Yeah, thin guy, gloves on. You seen anyone like that? I swallowed hard. He's staying here. Room 12. The man's breath hitched. We both looked down the hallway at the same time. Room 12's door was open. Just a crack. The lights inside were off. I grabbed the phone to call 911 while the brother slowly approached the door. Sir, wait, I hissed. Police are coming. He didn't listen. He nudged the door open with his boot. The room inside was dark and freezing. He stepped in, shouting his sister's name. I stayed in the doorway, heart pounding, scanning everything. The bed was stripped bare. The bathroom door hung half open. The curtains were torn from the rod. The air smelled faintly metallic. Then the brother whispered, Oh, God, no. On the mirror, smeared in rusty brown streaks, were the words, I felt my knees weaken. The brother rushed to the bathroom. A strangled cry ripped from him. I forced myself to look. Inside the tub was a long strip of silver duct tape, stuck to a single strand of hair. A woman's hair. Nothing else. No body. No sign of Hale. Just cold air in a room that felt wrong in every sense of the word. The police arrived minutes later. They cordoned off the lodge, questioned us for hours, searched the woods behind the motel. They found fresh tire tracks leading into the tree line. And about half a mile in, they found a shallow pit, recently dug up, empty. Whoever Jonathan Hale was, he had left, and he hadn't left alone. I quit the next morning. I didn't pack much. Just the clothes, my father's old watch, and enough savings to take the first bus out of Virginia. I moved in with Amy in North Carolina, determined to forget Witherford and the Driftwood Lodge. But even now, years later, on nights when the air turns cold for no reason and the house settles just right, I still hear that faint voice in the vents. Help! And sometimes when I'm passing a mirror in the dark, I swear I see smeared letters that aren't really there. I am not alone. I survived. But like a shadow trapped in a room far away, some part of me never truly left that motel. Story 5. I never planned on ending up in a place like Lone Elk Motel. If life had gone even a little differently, I would have still been living in Milwaukee with Danny, arguing about groceries and forgetting laundry in the dryer. But one bad year, my dad's sudden death, Danny walking out, my contract job ending out of nowhere, had left me feeling like someone had pulled the floor right out from under my feet. By the time April rolled around, I was living out of 2 duffel bags, sleeping on a friend's couch, and pretending I was figuring things out. Truth was, I needed space, real space, somewhere quiet, somewhere no one asked how I was doing. That's how I ended up in Redwood Falls, Minnesota, a town so small it didn't even have an exit sign, just a cracked board at the county line that said, "Welcome Hunters." My cousin Leah lived 2 towns over, and she told me places here rented cheap. She wasn't kidding. Lone Elk Motel sat beside a stretch of highway forested on both sides, a 2-story building with weathered green paint and a parking lot big enough for maybe 10 cars. The place looked like someone had tried renovating it once and then gave up. The "Help Wanted" sign in the window wasn't even taped. It was wedged between 2 cracked glass panes. Inside, the office smelled faintly like old coffee and dust. Behind the counter sat the owner, Marlon Pike, a man in his late 50s with thinning hair and the kind of eyes that always looked like he was calculating something. "You here for the night clerk job?" he asked without looking up from his crossword. "Yeah," I said. "Saw the sign." "You worked nights before?" "I've worked a lot of things," I said vaguely. He snorted. "That's what people say when their life's gone to shit." I didn't argue. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You look quiet. That's good. This place doesn't need chatter." That seemed to be all he needed. He slid a small ring of keys across the counter. "Midnight to 8. Room checks every 2 hours. Office stays locked. No guests in room 12. Pipes are bad. Electricity's worse. If someone asks for it, say it's unavailable. You get paid cash every Friday. No paperwork, no questions." Honestly, that should have been the first warning sign. But when you're desperate, warning signs feel optional. My first few shifts were painfully dull. Most nights, the only sounds were the hum of the vending machine, the occasional truck on the highway, and the flicker of the old fluorescent light above the counter that buzzed like an angry bee. There were regulars. Mr. Hobbs, a divorced dad who stayed on Wednesdays when he picked up his kids from his ex. Cassie, a traveling nurse who always asked for extra towels. A quiet older man named Ralph, who never spoke more than a whisper and always checked into room 6. Everyone else came and went. But room 12, the door was always shut, the curtains always drawn. Marlon kept the key on his own ring, not mine. Whenever I passed it during my 2 a.m. room checks, the door always looked a little wrong, like it was settled deeper into the frame than the others. On my 6th night, I asked Marlon about it. "What's with room 12?" I said casually. He didn't look up from the drawer he was sorting. "Plumbing's shot," he muttered, "and the wiring's old enough to start a house fire. Don't worry about it." "But I said don't worry about it," he snapped, and the conversation ended. I felt stupid for even asking, but I couldn't help noticing things. Little things, annoying things, like the knocking. Twice that week, always around 3 a.m. I'd be sitting in the office when a faint knock echoed down the hallway. 3 knocks, slow, hollow. I'd peek through the office window, expecting a late guest. Nobody. The first time, I thought I imagined it. The second time, I was sure it came from room 12. When I mentioned the knocks to Cassie during her checkout, she frowned. "I stayed here 2 years ago," she said. "Different owner back then. There was something weird about that room." "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "I don't know, but it didn't feel empty." Before I could ask more, her phone rang, and she waved goodbye. The night everything went wrong was a Tuesday. At 1:47 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the lot, engine rumbling lowly, like it had been driven for hours without stopping. The driver stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black jacket and gloves even though it was warm outside. He didn't come to the office. He walked straight to room 12. I stepped outside, confused. "Sir, you can't go in there. That room's unavailable." He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge I existed. He knocked once on the door of room 12, just once, and the door opened, by itself, not all the way, just a slow, creaking gap, like someone inside was giving permission. The man slipped in and the door shut behind him. I swear the hallway swallowed the sound. My heart hammered, but my mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe Marlon rented the room without telling me. Maybe the pipes got fixed. Maybe someone checked in earlier and I didn't notice. I forced myself back inside the office, shutting the door quickly. But something didn't sit right. At 2:05 a.m., I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. From room 12, but this time, softer, shakier, like someone knocking from the inside. At 2:18 a.m., the office phone rang. The number displayed on the screen froze me entirely. Room 12. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. I picked up slowly. "Hello?" A voice whispered on the other end. Hoarse, panicked. "Please," the voice rasped. "Please help me. Please, he locked me in. I can't—" "Who is this?" I whispered urgently. Before they could answer, another voice, deeper, calm, cold, spoke close to the receiver. "Wrong number." Then the line went dead. I stood there shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I called Marlon. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Fear curled in the bottom of my stomach, heavy and sickening. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, checked the door lock twice, and stepped into the hallway. My breathing sounded too loud in the empty corridor. Room 12 waited at the far end, door closed, dark. "Hello?" I called out softly. "Is anyone in there?" Silence. I lifted a hand and touched the doorknob. It felt cold, ice cold, like metal left outside in winter. I swallowed hard and turned it. It clicked open. The smell hit me first. Damp wood, old rot, and something metallic underneath it. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I stepped inside. The bed was stripped bare. The lamp on the nightstand was shattered, and the carpet was stained with something dark, almost black. But the worst part was the walls. Scratches, deep scratches, some fresh, some old. All clawed into the paint like someone had tried to carve their way out. My throat tightened. "Hello?" I whispered again. Then from the bathroom, a faint sob. I raised the flashlight and approached slowly. The door was halfway open. I nudged it gently. Inside, a young man, maybe 19 or 20, sat curled up against the bathtub, shaking violently. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, his wrists raw like he'd been tied with something rough. When he saw me, he flinched. "Please," he whispered, "don't let him take me again. Please." My voice cracked. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm getting you out of here." He nodded weakly, tears streaking through the dirt on his face. I helped him stand. He could barely keep his balance, and wrapped an arm around him as we moved toward the door. We almost made it. Almost. Because when I stepped into the hallway, someone was standing at the other end, the man from the SUV. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just walked toward us with steady, terrifying steps. The boy gripped my shirt, sobbing, "Please, no, no, no." I grabbed him tighter. "Run," I said. We sprinted down the corridor toward the side exit, the boy nearly collapsing with every step. Behind us, the man's footsteps grew louder. I shoved open the metal door, and we burst into the parking lot. "Get in the office," I yelled. The boy stumbled across the pavement while I blocked the path behind us. The man didn't even look out of breath. He moved with slow, deliberate certainty, like he knew the outcome already. We made it inside the office, locking the door just as he reached it. He stood outside the window, staring in with a calm expression, almost curious. The boy fell to the floor, sobbing. I grabbed the phone. 911. My voice was a mess as I told the operator everything. The stranger, the locked room, the boy, the scratches on the walls. "Officers are on the way," the dispatcher said. The man outside finally spoke, muffled through the glass. "That boy belongs to me." My heart dropped. "He's not going anywhere with you," I shouted. The man smiled faintly. "You shouldn't have opened that door." He stepped back. For a moment, everything was still. Then he walked away into the dark, disappearing behind the building. I locked every door and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 20. At exactly 3:14 a.m., police cars swarmed the lot. They searched everywhere, even the woods. The man was gone. The boy, Evan Hale, had been missing for 3 days from a town 40 miles south. His description matched a kidnapping case already in progress. The scratches in room 12? Older victims. Going back years. The previous motel owner, not Marlon, had been under quiet investigation for connections to trafficking cases. He'd vanished before they could arrest him. The man from the SUV was never identified, but they found signs someone else had lived in room 12 long before I arrived. Locks replaced, repairs hidden. Noise-dampening panels under the bed. And worst of all, a second room key tucked behind the wall outlet. Marlon shut the motel down 2 days later. He told me he didn't know. And maybe he didn't. But I couldn't keep working there after that night. I packed my things before sunrise and left Redwood Falls for good. I still dream about that hallway sometimes. The cold doorknob. The voice on the phone whispering for help. And that man's calm, steady footsteps behind us. I don't work nights anymore. And I'll never walk past a closed motel door without wondering what or who might be on the other side. Story 6. I never meant to be driving through northern Arizona that late, not after the week I just had. I'd spent the last 4 days in Flagstaff helping my younger sister Kelly pack up her apartment after her divorce. She'd tried to keep it together while boxing up pieces of a life she no longer wanted. But each night she broke down on the living room floor, and I'd just sit beside her, rubbing her back, telling her she wasn't alone. I guess in some ways her life falling apart woke something in me too. My name is Evan Harrow, 29 years old, software technician, and barely holding together the parts of myself I kept convincing everyone were fine. My breakup from last winter still lived inside me like a bruise. I worked too much, slept too little, and when I finally had a few days off to help Kelly, I realized how disconnected I'd become from everything. By the time I left Flagstaff that evening, I was exhausted, emotionally drained and physically shaky. My plan was simple: drive south toward Phoenix, stop at a motel somewhere around Camp Verde, sleep, and finish the trip in the morning. But life rarely goes the way we map it in our heads. By 11 p.m., the road was almost completely swallowed by fog, thick, milky, unnatural for the dry Arizona air. My old Ford Escape hummed along the 2-lane highway, headlights barely cutting more than a few feet in front of me. My eyes kept blurring. I blinked hard, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. "Come on, Evan. Stay awake," I muttered to myself. My phone had no signal. The road signs became less frequent. For a moment, I wondered if I'd taken the wrong exit entirely. Then I saw it, a faint red glow through the fog, a sign flickering weakly like it was on its last breath. Redwood Motel, vacancy. It stood alone beside a gravel lot, backed by dark pine trees that towered like silhouettes. There were no other buildings nearby, no towns for several miles, nothing but the misty stretch of highway behind me. Perfect, I sighed. Just one night. That's all. I pulled into the empty lot. Gravel snapped under my tires. The main building was a long, L-shaped stone structure, its roof sagging slightly, the wood on the porch warped by years of weather. A single window near the office was dimly lit. I killed the engine, stepped out, and instantly felt a drop in temperature, as if I'd walked into the edge of winter. The air smelled faintly of burnt wood and something else I couldn't place. The office door creaked open before I even touched it. A man stepped forward, late 60s maybe, tall but thin, wearing a collared shirt tucked neatly into faded trousers. His gray hair was combed back too carefully, as if he'd been waiting for someone all night. "Evening," he said, voice sandpaper rough. "Long drive?" "Yeah." Just passing through, I replied. I just need a room for the night. His eyes squinted slightly, studying my face longer than necessary. You look tired. I am, I admitted. He nodded once, then turned to the small wooden cabinet behind him, pulled out a brass key with a faded tag. Room 9, he said. Far end. Quietest room we've got. How much? I asked, reaching for my wallet. He shook his head. Pay in the morning. Rest first. Before I could respond, he gently closed the ledger on the counter, as if the conversation was done. Something about him unsettled me. Not threatening, just off. His smile never reached his eyes. His voice carried something hollow inside it. But I was too tired to think too deeply. All right, I muttered. Thanks. As I stepped out, he called after me softly. Don't leave the window open. I paused. Why? His expression changed, barely but enough. A tightening around the eyes, a flicker of discomfort. Wind gets loud out here, he said quickly. That's all. People complain. I nodded, pretending to believe him, and walked toward room 9. The room looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 80s. A mustard-colored carpet, a twin bed with a checkered quilt, a small desk with scratches on the surface. The wallpaper was peeling in one corner, revealing older layers beneath it. Stripes over floral, floral over something darker. But at least it didn't smell bad, just old. I dropped my backpack on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and lay back on the bed. The springs creaked beneath me. Just one night, I whispered, then home. I must have dozed off because, when I opened my eyes again, the room was pitch black. The lamp I'd left on had gone out. My heart thudded. Had there been a blackout? I reached for my phone, 1:17 a.m., still no signal. Then I heard it, a soft dragging sound, fabric lightly scraping across the carpet, somewhere near the foot of my bed. My breath hitched. I slowly pushed myself upright, blinking into the darkness. Hello, I whispered. The sound stopped instantly. My eyes began adjusting to the faint bit of moonlight slipping through the curtains. The room looked still, until the shadow in the corner shifted. A shape, crouched low, facing the wall. My throat tightened painfully. No, no, I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. I'm dreaming. I have to be. When I opened them, the shape had grown taller, unfolding itself slowly, rising to a height no human should reach. Its limbs were too long, the shoulders too narrow. It stood completely still, like it was listening. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Who are you? My voice cracked. No reply, only the faintest tremor in the air. Then, tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate taps against the wall. Not by a hand, but by something hard and thin. My heart hammered violently. Stop! I managed, voice shaking. The tapping stopped, but the shadow moved, its head tilting, slow and unnatural toward me. Not a full turn. Just enough to show me there was no face, no features, just smooth, pale emptiness like stretched skin. Adrenaline snapped through me. I lunged for the lamp, smacking the switch. Nothing. The bulb stayed dead. Come on, I hissed, slapping it again. Please, please. The bulb flickered, once, twice. On the third flicker, the light flashed just long enough for me to see the figure fully, tall, gaunt, skin like wet clay, arms that dangled too low. And where its chest should have been, it caved inward, like something had hollowed it out. The light died again. That was enough. I grabbed my bag, bolted for the door, and ripped it open so fast the knob clanged against the wall. The hallway was dim, lit by a single flickering overhead bulb. The door to room 9 slammed shut behind me with a sharp thud that wasn't caused by the wind. I sprinted down the walkway, heart in my throat. As I passed the office, the old man stepped out suddenly. Leaving already? He said calmly. My voice broke. There is something in that room. He stared at me, expression unreadable. What did you see? He asked softly. Too softly. I don't know, I stuttered. A figure. Something standing in the corner. Some kind of... Featureless? He interrupted. My blood ran cold. He knew. Listen, I gasped. Whatever is in there? He raised a hand. Some things latch onto people when they're vulnerable, he murmured. Sometimes they follow silence. Sometimes pain. Sometimes loneliness. I stepped back, breath shaking. What are you talking about? He looked past me toward room 9. You weren't meant to stay in that room, he whispered, but it chose you the moment you pulled into the lot. It? I echoed. What is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that chilled every part of me. You should go before it decides to leave that room. That was all I needed. I sprinted to my car. My hands trembled violently as I shoved the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, then sputtered, then roared to life. I reversed too fast, gravel spraying behind me. As I shot out of the lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The old man stood outside the office, watching. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the far end of the building, toward room 9. And the curtain in that window, it moved, not from wind, not from my car, but like something inside had gently pushed it aside to watch me leave. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station near Cottonwood, brightly lit, buzzing with life. I parked under the lights and sat there trembling, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what had happened. Part of me wanted to convince myself I'd hallucinated the entire thing, that exhaustion had twisted shadows into monsters. But I knew better, because even now as I sit under bright fluorescent lights, surrounded by people, I can still feel the heaviness of that room clinging to my chest. Like something is still watching me from just out of sight. And what scares me the most isn't that I saw it, it's that I'm terrified it saw me.